Welcome to Tank Radio. I'm K6ARK and I'm here with Frank KG5J.
KG5AHJ. I know it's a tongue twister. Boo, 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 boo. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So we're going to talk about sleeping bags, sleeping systems.
Yeah, Tank. Hey, what's going on, Tank? Wow. Ah, there he is. He's Tank Radio. I see him on there.
So let's dive in a little bit to sleeping bags. Tell me a little bit about what you have and what you think you might be looking for.
Well, the first question is easy. I don't have a sleeping bag.
All right.
I have a sleeping bag that I use at the camping trailer and other things, but it's large, it's bulky, it's nothing I will want to take camping more than out of the trunk camping. So I do need a new sleeping bag. I'm new to this world. I know it needs to be lightweight, and I don't know how cold we're going to get. Probably to around 40s, I think. So something around there.
Yeah, it'll probably freeze overnight. We'll be up pretty high, over 10,000 feet, and it's pretty common even during the summer for it to freeze up there overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we could, I would guess the coldest it may get would probably be like upper 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So for this trip, and in general for Sierra backpacking, I would recommend either a 15 or 20 degree bag if you sleep cold, or if you're someone that's generally pretty warm and you want to try to shave a little weight, a 32 degree bag would be a pretty good option as well.
Mm-hmm. And the 32 degrees is roughly saying that it's kind of built to go down to that degree level.
Right. Yeah, that's the temperature rating for the bag, and that's for roughly the average person, about as low as you want to go and still have a degree of comfort.
Yeah.
Now everybody's different too, right? I have friends who bring a -15 bag into the Sierra in the summer, and that's what they need to be comfortable and stay warm at night when it's in the 20s out. I'll bring a 35 degree bag in the same conditions and be sleep comfortably. So so there's a wide range, and there's some tricks you can do to help keep yourself warm. It's not just about your sleeping bag, it's about your sleep system. So let's talk a little more about bags first. One of the kind of key features or decisions you got to make in a sleeping bag is what kind of insulation are you going to go with. Pretty much all the backpacking bags are tapered. They're mummy shaped bags, and they have a hood for your head. They've got a zipper down one side, at least halfway, sometimes all the way down to your feet, and they're stuffed with insulation. Insulation's either going to be a synthetic, like a polypropylene, or a down. And the down bags are more expensive, but they last longer, they're a lot lighter, and they pack much smaller.
What's the down? Is the type of insulation? Or...
Yeah, it's goose down. It's feathers from geese. So it's that super fluffy, goose feather.
If I bring my own geese, will they cost less?
You could try. The geese might complain.
But we got solutions for that.
Yeah, there you go. The down bags come in different what they call fill ratings. So down is measured by the cubic inches that it will fill for a given weight of material. I think it's an ounce. So an ounce of down, that's 650 fill power, will fill up 650 cubic inches of space for 1 ounce of down. The high, that 600 or 650 is kind of at the lower end of fill power. And if you want to go fancier and more expensive and smaller and lighter, you can get up around the range of 900 fill power down, which basically means it's the fluffiest of fluffy feathers
Ooh,
filling your sleeping bag.
fluffy or
So
fluffy. I like that.
yes. And one thing I've learned over the years is that the higher the fill power, the easier it compresses. And that's both good and bad, because if you have something laying on your sleeping bag, or if you're in a bivy sack or some other kind of protective bag for your sleeping bag, you're going to compress some of that material with very little pressure if it's a real high fill power down. So you can end up with cold. It's easier to end up with cold spots if you go too high on the fill power. That said, with a nice high fill power down, you can get some really light sleeping bags. I've got a 32-degree bag that I typically carry on backpacking trips like this that weighs just under a pound for the whole sleeping bag. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, they talk a little bit about on this REI page, understanding the temperature ratings, and I think the key is that the temperature rating is not a guarantee of warmth. It gives you a relative comparison from one bag to another, and you kind of have to initially either rent a bag or make a guess at a purchase on whether you're a warm sleeper or a cold sleeper, and kind of adjust your pick based on that, and then go from there based on experience. So we've talked a bit about the sleeping bag, but really staying warm in cold weather when you're camping is dependent on multiple factors. You've got your sleeping bag, you've got your tent, of course, or your tarp, whatever your shelter is that blocks you from the wind, and then you've got a sleeping pad. And heat transfers through a variety of methods. You've got radiation, you've got convection. Cold air passing over a surface is going to pull heat away from something. You've got evaporation, and you've got conduction. And one of the easiest ways to lose heat when you're camping is through conduction, because the ground is pretty darn cold. So you got to insulate yourself from the ground, and that's where your sleeping pad comes in. If you think about it, your sleeping bag insulates based on its fluffiness, based on its loft. And the part of the sleeping bag that's underneath you doesn't do a whole lot to keep you warm, because your body is just compressing all the fluff out of it. So so sleeping pads, there's a couple of kind of key options in choosing a sleeping pad. The old school, common, simple, cheap ones are just your basic foam pad.
While you're pulling that up here, do you rather a foam pad that inflates, or I know they have some other a regular foam pad like you just found there, or the pictures that you showed earlier, the inflation?
So it depends. I use both. Foam pads in some cases, inflatable pads in other cases, and then both of them in yet other cases. So pros and cons of each, right? A foam pad is going to be less comfortable. It's just not as much padding, not as much cushion for you when you sleep. The nice thing about a foam pad is that you can't pop one.
Touche.
So been there, done that on a trip with an inflatable pad where I sprung a leak. Yeah, they come with patch kits. Yeah, the patch kits kind of work, but there's a risk to that, and sometimes you end up with a leak in your inflatable pad, and you end up colder at night, and you end up less comfortable at night because of it. That said, those inflatable pads are actually decently durable. They if you're a little careful with them, they last pretty good, and they're not that easy to pop. If you do pop it, it's not that hard to patch once you're back home. Patching in the field is a little more of a challenge with limited materials and resources.
That's why you have that little roll of duct tape, and then you spend 20 minutes doing this to get that little piece off, and then there, patched.
Yeah. So So generally speaking, I would still recommend getting an inflatable pad. I think that's probably your best bet for the combination of both comfort and insulation.
Mm-hmm.
Pads are rated with an R value. You can see down here. This R value gives you an idea of how good of insulation the pad has.
Mm-hmm.
So again, kind of like a sleeping bag temperature rating, it's a good tool to compare pad A versus pad B to determine which one is likely to keep you warmer.
Mm-hmm.
Pads that keep you warmer and have more insulation are going to be more bulky and weigh more. So that's part of your trade-off as well. And then with any of this gear, the lighter weight you want the stuff, the more you're going to pay for it. And that's really kind of an exponential curve. You know, you your initial steps up in price will save you a decent amount in weight, and
Mm-hmm.
then as you get to the extreme, you start spending hundreds of dollars to just save, you know, grams on stuff sometimes.
Well, ounces will break that camel's back. The picture that you showed there a second ago, is that self-inflating, where
um,
you unscrew it, or do you got to blow into it?
it'll be a combination of the two. Some of the pads do have some foam in them that will help it self-inflate, but in most cases you have to blow into them. Uh, Generally speaking, I don't really prioritize pads that have an inflating system, like a bag that gives you a pump to inflate it for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Except in some cases where there's an insulating material like down inside some of the pads, you know, the goose feathers, where the moisture from your breath will damage the insulation and cause
Ooh.
problems.
Ooh.
So there are certain pads that you can't actually blow up with your mouth. You have to use a pump or a bag to inflate it. So take a look at that as you're shopping for pads, and consider maybe what will work best for you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Let me find. I use a Therm-A-Rest Neo Air. And these are kind of some of the higher end. Therm-A-Rest was one of kind of the original inflatable sleeping pad developers, and they still make some super nice stuff. So this is a Neo Air pad. As you can see, they are pricey,
Mm-hmm.
190 bucks or so for these things. But a full length pad with a decent insulating R value weighs about 12 ounces. So it's nice and light. And gives you, what is it, about 2 inches? Yeah, 2.5 inches thick of padding to sleep on. So pretty comfortable stuff. Let's see here. So I talked a little bit about how the sleeping bag keeps you warm from convection and radiant heat,
Mm-hmm.
and the pad keeps you warm by insulating you from conductive losses. REI gives you a little bit of a table here to give you ideas as far as what kind of sleeping bag temperature rating you might want for different conditions. And as you can see, they're being conservative with their recommendations, saying that if you're going to have lows around 32 degrees, go ahead and get that 20-degree bag and make sure you're going to stay warm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good standard recommendation for most people, is to kind of take the next step down in temperature rating beyond what you think the lowest temperature.
You don't want to get out there and you have a weather snafu and it drops another 10 degrees for you. Is that R rating? Here's the engineer in me coming out. Is that R rating an ISO standard, or is that an REI value?
You know, I'm not entirely certain. That there may be. I would guess that may trace over to a higher level standard,
Okay.
because I know they use R values in other insulation measures as well, and I think it's all the same.
Okay. It's just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we talked a little bit about the sleeping bag insulation types. Again, down is going to be lighter weight, easier to compress. It does really well in dry conditions. If it gets wet, it loses its insulating ability. and it lasts a long time if you take a little bit of care of it. Synthetic bags are going to be, you know, quicker drying. They're going to give you some degree of insulation when they get wet, not, you know, nearly as much as when they're dry. But a damp synthetic bag is going to keep you a lot warmer than a damp down bag. We don't need to worry too much about moisture on our trip, but that may be something worth considering in Texas or other areas that you may be taking the sleeping bag out in.
Yeah.
Down is definitely the most expensive of the options as well. I would expect to pay in the probably $250 to, you know, $1,000 range for a down sleeping bag, depending on how fancy you want to go. But the cheapest ones are going to be around $200 to $250 for a decent down sleeping bag.
Let's go look at those synthetic installation.
Yeah. So the challenge with synthetic bags, again, is they're going to be a bit heavier and they're not going to pack as small either. So so you know, if you're going to go with a synthetic bag, you might consider looking at a slightly larger pack, perhaps that 50 to 60 liter range instead of, you know, 40 to 50 range. We talked a little bit about sleeping bag shapes. A lot of people kind of new to backpacking that have done some camping think they might want a semi-rectangular or rectangular bag just because they like to move around when they sleep. I discourage that for backpacking because you're carrying all that extra weight, and ultimately the mummy shaped sleeping bag is going to keep you a lot warmer in cold temperatures.
Do you end up usually sleeping on your back in that mummy shapes, or you can have the freedom of tossing and turning and rolling to one side or the other?
Yeah, you can definitely toss and turn. I sleep on my back, but Johnny, my girlfriend, she's a side sleeper, and she'll regularly sleep on her side on that same sleeping pad that I mentioned, the Therm-A-Rest Neo Air. It's thick enough and comfortable enough for that. And you know, the sleeping bags let you move well enough to be able to sleep on your side as well. And the photo here kind of shows how you'll often be snugging yourself up. There's a draw cord that kind of sucks that in around your head and brings the sleeping bag in. When it's real cold at night, I'll have it down to where just my nose is sticking out of the bag, so I can get, you know, fresh air and not feel claustrophobic, and that'll keep you nice and warm.
How cold have you went out and slept in when you were camping?
Oh, I would say probably like 0 Fahrenheit, you know, single degree temperatures are around 0, maybe slightly under for winter trainings.
Yeah, I would be like, oh, let's get back inside, guys. Winter trainings.
It's not so bad.
Your search group?
Yeah, with search and rescue
Awesome,
team.
awesome. We don't do overnight trainings. Maybe we need
we
to bring
always
that
do
up.
overnight trainings. Yeah, it's awesome.
It sounds like it was going to be a blast.
Yeah. So sizing is an important consideration as well. Typically, sleeping bags come in regular and long. Regular bags typically fit up to about 6 feet tall, and long bags will fit people up to about 6'6". If you're taller than that, you may need to get a custom sleeping bag.
No, no.
Yes.
Get a 5'9" boy here, so I'm good.
Yep. So look for a regular bag. Most of the bags, when you look at their technical specs on the website, you'll see that they have a hip and shoulder girth rating as well. So if you're a broader shouldered person, you might want to get a bag that has a little bit more room in the shoulders and or the waist. If you're a you know, skinny linear person like me, you know, perhaps the regular width bag or some of the narrower width bags might work better for you. There are some sleeping bags, particularly the Big Agnes brand, that don't have any insulation built into the bottom of the sleeping bag. All the insulation's on the top, and on the bottom they design the bag with a sleeve that your sleeping pad slides into. So it basically attaches your pad to your bag. It's kind of a cool concept and a neat design in that you don't end up carrying all that extra wasted insulation that's not really going to do anything to keep you warm anyway, because it's getting compressed underneath you. So those are, I think, worth looking at and considering as an option as well. Let's see here. Some of the other features you'll often see in a sleeping bag. We talked a little bit about the hood. Definitely get one that comes up over your head. That's a key element to keep you warm at night. Draft tubes and collars. Some of the lower temperature rating bags will have kind of a little stick or tube of insulation right along the zipper, so that it blocks any potential air from coming in through the zipper, or your skin coming in contact with the zipper and getting cold spots that way.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then a lot of them also have some kind of stiffer material right along the zipper to help prevent the zipper from snagging as you're zipping and unzipping. They mentioned left and right zip here. A lot of bags come in a left zip or a right zip. Right-handed people typically prefer a left zip bag because you reach kind of across your body to unzip rather than reaching up like this to try to unzip. So if you're right-handed, consider a left zip bag. If you're left-handed, consider a right zip bag. It doesn't really matter that much. It's not that big of a deal to use your non-dominant hand to zip and unzip your sleeping bag. Fabric. Every sleeping bag is going to come in some kind of a ripstop nylon kind of fabric. Some are lighter, some are more a little heavier. The more expensive bags tend to be lighter. The lighter material also tends to be less durable, so you have to be a little bit careful with it. I have a friend I was on a trip with, and he had a super ultralight, fancy, expensive bag, and he's zipping it at night. It's dark, and the zipper gets snagged on the material. And rather than, taking his time and carefully trying to undo it, he just pulled a little harder, and it ripped a hole in the bag.
Oh. Oh no.
Yeah. So, there are trade-offs with ultralight gear, and that applies to, anything backpacking related. Your lightweight gear is going to be more expensive and less durable, but it's less to carry on your back. So some of the accessories that your sleeping bag may come with, it most definitely should come with a storage sack, just a large bag to store it in. You don't want to store any sleeping bag fully compressed because it loses its ability to fluff back up, and that fluff is what keeps you warm. So make sure you keep that big storage sack it comes with and store the bag in it. I stick mine in plastic bins that keep any kind of critters, bugs, or rodents out, and in those storage bags out.
So you just want to loosely fold them or loosely have them inside these bins and not have any compression.
Right, for long-term storage.
Okay.
And then, a lot of them will come with stuffed sacks. The one they show in the photo here has these compression straps on it. Meh, those add extra weight. I typically don't use a stuffed sack. I just stuff the sleeping bag straight into my pack in that sleeping bag compartment. Or even if I don't have a sleeping bag compartment, I just stuff it into the bottom of the pack and then pack everything in around it to keep it compressed down there. Saves a little bit of extra gear and weight, and it seems to work well enough for me. So that's my recommendation there.
Cool.
The last piece they mention here to consider is a sleeping bag liner. Basically, it's a sheet sewn into the shape of a sleeping bag. And I do like to carry a liner primarily just to keep my sleeping bag clean. I spend a lot of nights in a sleeping bag each year. And the more I can keep my body oils off of the sleeping bag, the longer it's going to last. They do add a little bit of warmth to the bag as well. And, a cotton or silk cotton blend is a lot more comfortable on your skin than just the nylon of the sleeping bag. So I like a silk cotton blend sleeping bag liner. And yeah, that's a good extra tip to add to your bag.
Awesome. So I am starting to look at bags and backpacks. That's why I asked you to come
Yeah.
over and talk to me about this stuff because I want to start training with them. And I think that's going to be the most expensive really items is the sleeping bag and this backpack itself. Um,
Yep.
Past that, we already talked about sleeping pads or the inflatable pads. Um, I got water bladders already for water. I don't know
Hmm.
what else I need then. Tents. That'd be another time. Tents.
Yep. Yeah, we can talk shelters another time. There
Yeah.
are there are a number of options with shelters, and the materials and the weights of shelters have really gone down and improved over the last probably 10 years or so. So it's really cool to see the kind of options that you have out there to have a legit 2-person tent that weighs like 2.5 pounds. So
Mhm.
there's some pretty cool options.
That sounds amazing. Well, thank you, Adam. I really appreciate it, and we will talk about tents next time, maybe in a month or so.
Cool.
I'm spacing the big purchases about a month apart, so it's
Mhm.
not the credit card. It's just two, three, four, five, $100 all at the same time. Space it out. Get if you're buying stuff from scratch, start with the backpack so you can start training day one. That's my
Yep.
recommendation.
Cool. Let
Um,
me go ahead and stop sharing the screen there.
Awesome. That's all I had. Thank you, Adam.
Cool.
You're
Well, thanks. Good luck with your shopping, and let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help out.
will do.